Javihadi Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari 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 Yasodhanandana Bhattacharandana Yasodhanandana Bhattacharandana Jamuna Tirabana Jadi Jamuna Tirabana Jadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Jayo Vishnupad Paramahamsa Adivitavacharya Astatarasatasi Simad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So, how are we going to keep the interest of you four young Vaishnavas over there? Going to be a bit of a challenge, I think. You all know who is Lord Brahma, right? Fantastic. We are reading from that chapter 14, where Brahma offered his prayers after the Brahma Vimohan Leela, the stealing of the calves, the coward boys putting him in a cave. You know the pastime, right? Okay. So he offered prayers, 40 verses of prayers, and then Krishna didn't say anything back. So he had requested Krishna permission to return to Brahmaloka and resume his service of overseeing the universe. He has a big service. So Krishna's silence meant affirmation, confirmation, go ahead. He returned. Krishna went, gathered up the calves, because that's how this all started back in chapter 12. He went searching for the calves because they were wandering while grazing for more grass. He found the calves 1 year later and came back to where the cowherd boys were sitting. They were all under the influence of Krishna's Yogamaya, not knowing that 1 year had passed. They got a little bigger because they're 1 year older. They were 5, now they're 6. That's how old they were. And they finished lunch. Krishna was really happy. And they were really happy because they're attached to Krishna, Krishna's attached to them. And they had been separated for a whole year while Krishna was manifesting himself as the cowherd boys, going back and forth, giving his association to the mothers. So when they came back, to Vrindavan, they finished lunch, went back to Vrindavan. Listen carefully, because this is like what the whole topic is about. when they came back, the ladies seeing Krishna were more happy seeing Krishna than seeing their own sons. And Shukadeva Goswami was asked by Maharaj Parikshit, wait a minute, that's unnatural. Mothers may have affection for other children, but they have special affection for their own children. So how to explain this? And going back to chapter 12, the mothers had desired to have Krishna as their son because they had more affection for Krishna than for their son. That was astonishing. Then when Krishna became their son, they had more affection for their son than for Krishna, because now Krishna was their son, plus Krishna. But when Krishna came back the third time, they had more affection for Krishna than for their son, when before it was Krishna was their son. So how to understand this? Because it seems unnatural. And so we're on verse 55, 56, discussing when there's it's psychology and ecstasy, both. Psychology is when one is attached to something, what's behind the something is the soul. So one is attached to the body or the body of family, friends, relatives. It's really attachment to the soul because the soul is the basis and support of that person, that entity. So there's some kind of arduous philosophy presenting all of that. And then comes the section that we're in, which is Krishna's as the bodies are resting upon the souls are resting upon Krishna. And you're going to hear some of that in the commentaries that we're going to read shortly. So we started reading verse 55, and now we're continuing with verse and then the commentary. Let's see here. Yeah. Verse 56. Those in this world it's 10, 14, 56. Those in this world who understand Lord Krishna as he is, sees all things, whether stationary or moving, as manifest forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such enlightened persons recognize no reality apart from the Supreme Lord Krishna. So the previous verse was bodies of family, friends, relatives, etc. They're resting upon souls that are part of Krishna. He's the Supreme Soul. He's unseen as Paramatma, but he manifests in this world. Krishna manifests in this world to be seen by everybody. The good and the bad people. And he enables even the bad people to see him, what to speak of his devotees. Because of their love for him, they see him with outstanding affection. Here he is, coming home from herding the calves. This is the BBT purport, and then we'll read some other commentary. Everything exists within Lord Krishna, and Lord Krishna exists within everything. That's chapter 9, Bhagavad Gita, the first few verses, if you recognize the connection between them. Still, the order of progression is always from the energetic to the expanded energy. What does that mean? Lord Krishna is original identity from whom all other identities emanate. He is the supreme energetic from whom all categories and dimensions of energy become manifest. Thus, our personal bodies, self, family, friends, nation, planet, universe, and so on are all manifestations of the Supreme Lord, who expands himself through his personal potencies. Lord Krishna is certainly the supreme object of our love and attraction, and other objects, such as body, family, and home, should be secondary objects of our affection. Moreover, a close analytic study of the actual situation will reveal that even the secondary objects of love are also manifestations of Lord Krishna. Just like in the backyard of your home. Did you see the two deer out there? Male and female. They look, I've never seen a deer like that before. It's a cross between a big dog or a small horse. I mean, deer are generally very slender. And these guys out there, they're kind of chubby and a little different looking. But so, I was thinking, I'm sure they're going to get something to eat because I think that the lady is sitting there and the guy went looking for something. Shall hold the fort. So there's objects of affection. You see a deer and you feel some affection. Oh dear, there's a deer. So not just even within the species, but even some objects. You may, one of you boys came in with a sled. So, I mean, no sleds in the house. But, you're attached to your sled, you bring your sled. Even inanimate objects one may be attached to. But the message here is what's behind it is he who is, or that which is, the source of all sleds, of all deer, of all objects, of all souls and coverings of souls, and even inanimate objects, like the house. It's an inanimate object. But people may be attached. The conclusion is that Lord Krishna is our only friend and object of love. Then the paragraph reads, in his Krishna book, Prabhupada comments on this verse as follows, quote, without being an expansion of Krishna, nothing can be attractive. What is attractive within the cosmic manifestation is due to Krishna. Krishna is therefore the reservoir of all pleasure. The active principle of everything is Krishna. And highly elevated transcendentalists see everything in connection with him. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is stated that a Mahabhagavata, a highly advanced devotee, sees Krishna as the active principle in all movable and immovable living entities. Therefore, he sees everything within this cosmic manifestation in relation to Krishna, even the two deer in the backyard. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary is really short, 2 sentences. After considering all the objects of love, such as sun's body and soul, it is concluded that Krishna is the final object of love. In this verse, the word vastuta, or in truth, has the sense of but finally, like that's the last word of attachment or attraction or loving effect, object of loving affection. Krishna is the vastuta, the final word. Those who know Krishna, that's what the verse says, those who know Krishna as he is, see him as the cause of all moving and non-moving entities and also the effect. Now we're going to get into some philosophy of cause and effect. Jiva Goswami writes, in order to say that Krishna is the supreme form for not only all jivas but for inanimate objects also, Shukadev first explains the greatness of Krishna among all forms. Paragraph. In truth, in this world, for those who consider carefully, all living and inanimate objects and all forms of the Lord, such as Narayana, are included in Krishna. Stated up in reverse, anything that is not in him does not exist. Prabhupada said the same thing this way. There's two things. There's Krishna and there's Krishnas. And there's not a third thing in the creation of God. There's no void in the creation of God. So that it exists in Krishna. If it doesn't exist in Krishna, it doesn't exist. Jiva Goswami writes, by knowing the cause, one knows the result. That's like if you know Krishna, you know all things. You've heard that one before, right? If you know Krishna, you know all things. In 26 Second Avenue, someone asked Prabhupada, Swamiji, I was told that if one who knows Krishna knows all things, is that true? Prabhupada said, yes. And then the man said, how many windows are there in the Empire State Building? And Prabhupada's answer was, how many drops of water are there in a mirage? Immediately. You know, trivia, that you know all things doesn't mean you're an encyclopedia of trivia. You know the essence and the basis and support of all things, and that's the basis and support of the things. So you know the connection between all things and the source of all things by knowing the source of all things. By knowing the cause, one knows the result. By knowing the angsi, one knows the angsa. This is Sanskrit terminology. Just like we heard yesterday evening, the body is deha, and the one who occupies the body is dehi. Deha, dehi. And there's the angsa, and there's the angsi. There's the part, and then there's the source of the part, or that which is the base and support for the part, angsa, angsi. Like, you know, the word, there's avatars and there's avatari that we're familiar with. There's so many avatars, and Krishna is the source of the avatars, so he's avatari. So there's angsas, there's extensions from Krishna, and he's the angsi. When the cause is absent, the result is also absent. Everything else is like foam on the waves in a huge ocean. What's the significance of the foams? It's part of the ocean. And the foam may form and then it pops or bursts. It's no longer foam, it's just a wave. Then, interesting, everything is like photons external to the sun globe. I don't know what the Sanskrit is that got translated as photons, but we discussed this yesterday too. It's particles. And as you go along, you four boys, as you go along in science, you're going to hear some discussion at some point probably while you're still in high school, about light, because it's a novelty in modern science, whether light is a particle or a wave. Have you heard something about that? Yeah, something. So there's experiments that show light can demonstrate properties of a wave. It can demonstrate properties of light. So which is it? And as far as the modern scientific experiments, at least the ones that I'm aware of, it depends on the observer whether light shows the quality of being a particle or a wave. That's an interesting experiment. It is said in the second canto, we're going to hear this twice, quote, 2.7.50. This is chapter 7 of Canto 2 is a description of incarnations. Like Canto 1, chapter 3 is a description of incarnations, because that was one of the questions. So the answer is given, list of incarnations. Chapter 7 of Canto 2 is a list of incarnations, and towards the end, Sukadeva Goswami says, Bhagavan, the maintainer of the universe, has been described in summary. The universe and the jivas within the universe are none other than the Lord, but arise from the Lord, who is different from them. Okay, so there's Bhagavan, or there's the source, and there's that which emanates from the source. So there's living entities, and there's the cosmos, or the universe, or material nature. So the universe and the jivas, they're also from the Lord. Since they arise from the Lord, who is different from them, they're of Him, or they are the Lord in one sense, because they're from Him. You okay with that? Okay. Because this is, what I just said is Lord Chaitanya's teaching of the oneness and difference of all things from the source of emanation. Achintya Beda Bed Tattva. We've heard that so many times. So that particular verse, and this verse that's being spoken by Shukadev to Maharaj Parikshit, this is the non-difference part, and there's the difference part. Okay, Sanatana Goswami writes, Bhagavan is defined. He is directly realized as the highest cause, in which all things reside. Nothing or any other class of things exists. Nothing exists apart from Krishna, the source. This verse expresses the result of proper knowledge. For those who know that Krishna is the soul of all beings, everything manifests as the abode of Lord Krishna, like this universe. Of course, it's his external energy, but it's his energy, so it's his universe. So it's his abode. That is, the Lord resides in everything. Paragraph. In order to say that Krishna is the supreme form for not only all jivas, but all inanimate objects also, Sukadev first explains the greatness of Krishna among all forms. Like, this is philosophy, so it's a bit of a stretch for middle school students. What grade are you for middle school? Yeah. Okay, so next comes an extension of what was just said by explaining pradhan. Do you know what is pradhan? Any one of you four? Pradhan. You know what Mahatattva is? You've heard of Mahatattva. You've heard of it. But if I asked you, what is it, you wouldn't be able to describe it. Okay. So in the process of creation, there's Mahavishnu. The Vedic picture of time is there's periodic, time moves in cycles. Summer, fall, winter, spring. It's definitely winter. And then after winter comes the next season, and it cycles around and around. Or there's cycle of day and night. Or there's, etc. Time moves in cycles. So there's a cycle of cosmic annihilation, resting, creation, maintenance, dissolution, resting, creation, maintenance, dissolution, resting, big cycles of time. So during the cosmic annihilation time, all the living entities are within the body of Mahavishnu. They're withdrawn. He does this through the agency of time. So for cosmic annihilation, it's really simple. You pull the plug. Pull the plug means he withdraws his time energy. And when he withdraws his time energy, a visual image is, probably here in Detroit, they have those things people put in their front lawns at Christmas time, some kind of like Santa Claus or a snowman or something arranged. And then they pump it up at night, and then they pull the plug. And there's just this pile of some plastic thing lying on their front lawn. And then at night they pump it up again. There's Santa Claus or a snowman and his reindeer. So to pull the plug on creation is time energy makes it manifest, and time energy keeps it going, and time energy, when withdrawn, it collapses. The collapsed state, that little snowman or Santa Claus that's lying on a heap on someone's front lawn during the daytime, that's what pradhan is. Pradhan is the total material energy in its undifferentiated, unmanifest state. It's like a big warehouse all jumbled up. All the elements are there, but they're not even differentiated to different elements. It's just the total material nature in its unmanifest, dormant, like a cloud. A cloud of material energy just hanging out. That's pradhan. Mahavishnu glances over that pradhan. And with his glance goes time energy and the living entities that were within his body, and then things start to happen because time energy moves and the living entities start to awaken from the sleep state, and that pradhan starts to differentiate into elements. That's called Mahatattva. One is the undifferentiated thing, cloud, and then it becomes, the warehouse gets sorted out. There's this part, that part, 24 elements. That's Mahatattva. And there's more, but that's to keep it simple. So the word that's used here is another word for pradhan, but the commentary goes back to the word pradhan. It's the original unmanifested causal phase of material nature. That's a mouthful. So it's material nature before it's manifest. The original material nature before it starts forming into houses and trees and deers in your backyard and, and family members and sleds and stuff. There's no shape or, form to stuff, nor names, nothing. It's just original, unmanifested, causal phase of material nature. That's what this verse is speaking about. So Shukadev Goswami, I'll just explain it and then read the verse. Shukadev Goswami is saying to the king, to Maharaj Parikshit, this pradhan, this unmanifested form of the totality of material nature, that's the source of all material things. And the source of even that is Krishna. What then could one ascertain to be separate from him? He's just like making the same point, using some technical terminology to say the same point. But it's for us that are down here in conditioned life and material existence on planet Earth. It's putting the big thing in context. Our experience isn't of the big thing. We're experiencing a small part of the big thing. But the big thing is under Krishna's direction. His time energy is his energy, but we also know from Bhagavad Gita, time energy is him. Kalos me. Kala, it means time. And asmi means me. Not mine, but it's me. Kala asmi. Time I am, destroyer of all things, from Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna's own energy and Krishna are non-different. Right from Bhagavad Gita. Say it again. Krishna's own energy and Krishna are non-different. Now it's an energy. In one sense, it's different than the energetic. But the energy has a relationship of non-difference with the source. Because the energy doesn't exist without the energetic. You don't have sunshine without sun. The shine has no separate existence. You don't find shine somewhere. Or light in the room without a light source. The universe is dark. Not just at night it's dark. The universe is dark. And you need light in order to see stuff. And so that light is Krishna's energy. And the stuff that you see with the light is Krishna's energy. And the eyes with which you see, and the power of the eyes to see, because you could be blind, all of that is Krishna's energy. It's resting on Krishna. So what can exist separate from Krishna? That's what this verse is saying. Now I could read the purport, but it gets a little technical, and I don't know if this is the right audience for a little technical. I'll read the first. It's short, two, like 4 or 5 sentences. Vishwanath Chakravarti. BBT has no purport. Vishwanath writes in his commentary, how is this? Bhava, one of the meanings of bhava, is that from which things arise. And thus it means a cause from which things arise. The cause of all moving and non-moving beings is pradhan. Pradhan. Remember that word? The big warehouse, all jumbled up. The unmanifested, undifferentiated totality of the material energy, pradhan. That's a cause. Bhava artha means the form of that cause. So you can say a cloud is just, it's there, but there's a form of that cloud, and that's what this term in this verse used by Shukadev. It's the form of that cause. What's the cause of that cause? Krishna. Pradhan's cause is Krishna. Therefore, what things besides Krishna can be described? Say it negatively. Can you describe something that's not part of the effect of Krishna's cause? There's no such thing. Similarly, bhavartha can also mean the Atma, which was discussed in the earlier verses, just before this section. The Atma is the cause of the senses. So, we have bodies. The bodies are comprised of senses. What are those senses and the body resting upon? The Atma. And Atmas and bodies are resting upon Krishna. Everything's resting upon Krishna. And one who sees that, when they see things, they see in relation to Krishna, the deer in the backyard and the sled and the TV screen and, kitchen table and family members. And they're manifestations of Krishna's energy resting upon Krishna. That's those who can see Krishna, or who can see in all things in relation to Krishna. The cause of the soul is Krishna. The soul is the cause of the senses. The cause of the soul is Krishna. Excuse me. The cause of the senses is the soul. Got it backwards. The bodies are resting upon the soul. Souls are resting upon Krishna. Krishna is the cause of everything. What's of use of anything else? Only he is worthy of service. Now, all of this, we're going to end. All of this is in response to the question, simple question. Why did the ladies, when Krishna came back from herding calves with the cowherd boys, why did they have more affection for Krishna than even for their sons? Normally, people have more affection for matter than they do for Krishna. And so their attachment, their affinity, their happiness is in stuff. Family members, their home, their stuff. Their shoes, their jacket, especially when it's cold out. That's happiness and an attachment to those things. But the basis, those that have spiritual understanding, is the basis is the soul, and the basis of souls and stuff is Krishna. And that's the nature of the Brijbasis. They have not only attachment to Krishna, they have, we've been hearing, prema that's over the top. And so when they see Krishna, that's over the top. They have affection for their sons. There's the soul, there's the body, there's the bodily connection. Natural. More natural, most natural is affection for Krishna. And that's their nature. Now the focus has gone to the mothers of the boys, but the same applies to all the residents of Vrindavan. The cows, because Krishna went looking for the calves. At 5 years old, Krishna's not herding cows yet, because cows are really big and he's really small, because a 5-year-old boy is small. Nanda Maharaj argued with Krishna. He wanted to take care of the cows. Mother Jasoda said, no. They're so big and you're so small. But he was insisting. This goes back to chapter 8. He was insisting. And the elders were noticing. Krishna comes along with us when we go out taking care of the cows. But they just follow Krishna. We can't get them to do anything other than follow Krishna. Krishna's attached to them, they're attached to Krishna. Nanda, you have to let this boy be with the cows. So he made a concession. Mother Jasoda said no. He said, you can take care of the calves, but you have to come back for lunch. You can't stay out all day. So they came back for lunch initially, but then today, by the time they're 5, that was when he was 3 years, 4 months. Think of somebody that's that small, 3 years, 4 months, taking care of calves all day long. By the time he came 5, they didn't have to come back for lunch. They took lunch with them. And the mothers, the calves were as much as Krishna was attached to the cows and the calves, they were attached to him. It's equal. Because love is a two-way street. It's not they love him and he doesn't care about them. It's not like that in Braj. They love him and he loves them. They consider him life and soul and he considers them life and soul. And he's been apart from, so they're in ecstasy. So the same as for the queen, for the mothers, so for all. The calves, the cowherd boys, the peacocks, the trees and the creepers. And there's wonderful descriptions of how all that works. Seeing Krishna's form, Krishna's touching the creepers, they shimmered in ecstasy, profusely supplying flowers and abundance of sap coming from the trees. What was there? Tears, honey, birds dancing. Birds dancing. During this past weekend, for the benefit of the devotees in Singapore, we made a parikram visit, a virtual visit to Govardhan. And in one section, there's a discussion by the gopis about the deer. And the gopis say the deer are so fortunate because they get to see Krishna. And when they see Krishna and hear his flute, their ears stand erect and tears come from their eyes. Seeing Krishna and hearing the sound. So it's not an ordinary place. And so they have the association of Krishna because of their affection. He wants to be with them and they want to be with him. That's Vrindavan. And if we're smart, we want to go there. But we one of the ways to get there, according to the Bhagavatam, according to this chapter 14 that we're reading, is hearing these topics about the Brijbasis and becoming absorbed in the topics about the Brijbasis, because that way we become like them. By hearing about them, we become attracted to their kind of love and their kind of relationship with Krishna. And of course, there's all variety, and so our eternal relationship with Krishna is of some variety yet to be discovered. But it's already there. And these topics awaken that natural love for Krishna. And so back to the purport, in the advanced stage, one sees all things in relation to Krishna. We don't. We see all things as, I like it, I don't like it. It makes me happy, it doesn't make me happy. It's all about me and my likes and my senses and me and mine. And the Brijbasis are different. So let's see if there's some discussion. I'm going for 45 minutes. Any topic at all within the room, and after we spend some time with that, we can go online. No? Okay. Usually it takes time for the online people to send in. They have sent something. Okay.
Question from Sridhar Das. Why does the conditioned soul have to struggle so much to cultivate love of Godhead, even though it is said affection for Krishna is completely natural?
That is a good question. The difficulty has to do with our attachment. We're not attached to the misery of material life, we're attached to material life. We're attached to trying to be enjoyers of the temporary, which is not natural. So it's a diseased condition. It's difficult because we're attached to the sources of misery. Which is unfortunate. We're not attached to the misery, we're attached to the sources of misery. So here we are, struggling. And it's the duration of time that we've been at it, trying to be enjoyers of the temporary. We can't trace out the beginning. It's a lot of conditioning, layers and layers and layers of conditioning.
This was a question from yesterday's class.
Okay.
There was a request for you to, if you could explain more about Gopal Guru.
Gopal Guru. Trataka is the process. I didn't mention the name. Yesterday evening we were at someone's home that was speaking about, as he chants, he finds it helps him to see visually with his eyes the mantra written and follow the mantra with his eyes as he's chanting the sound. So it's engaging the eyes along with the tongue and the ear. It's called Trataka. So Gopal Guru used that system. He's not the only one, but he was. There's a deity that Kashi Mishra, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed in the house of Kashi Mishra. He was assigned. When Lord Chaitanya returned to Jagannath Puri, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya approached the king, Prataparudra, requesting the king for a suitable place for Lord Chaitanya to stay now that he's back in Puri. And said should be not far from the Jagannath temple, so he could go each day and take darshan of Lord Jagannath, but quiet. So the king said, I know just the person, Kashi Mishra. Now it says the house of Kashi Mishra, but it's like an estate. Big boundary walls and, a big thing. Not just a house, like a house. So within a part of that house was Lord Chaitanya's residence. Gambhira is in the house of Kashi Mishra. Kashi Mishra was a Brahmin and he had deities. And Gopal Guru became the custodian of those deities and the property of Kashi Mishra. But Gopal Guru had no children. And so it became an issue after the departure of Gopal Guru, who would take charge of the deity and who would take charge of the house of Kashi Mishra. And it was a big hubbub over that, including Gambhira and the celebrated Gambhira. And it got settled. But he was very, very, very elevated Vaishnav, gave teachings. We discussed a little bit about how he got the name. His name was just a little boy Gopal. And he noticed that when Brahman, when he went to pass water, he would hold his tongue. And he asked, why are you doing that? And he said, because my tongue has just naturally chants. And so I don't want to have the holy name contaminated while I'm passing water. So he scolded him in front of Lord Chaitanya, little boy. Said, what kind of nonsense is this? The holy name, it can't be contaminated by anything. It's Purna Shuddho, Nitya Mukto, completely pure. Lord Chaitanya heard and said, you're Guru. So from that time he became known as Gopal Guru. Eventually he had disciples and he wrote teachings. There's a book that he wrote that if somebody here wants a copy, you can ask Shamsundar, the previous president of the Houston Temple. He has a copy. Shamsundar loves that book. In that book of Gopal Guru, it gives meanings of the names of Krishna, each of the names of the mantra. He's a Gopal Guru fan, very much so, because he loves chanting. So Gopal Guru was celebrated for three things: his deity worship, his ardent chanting of the holy name, and his writings. So he was a younger generation. We don't hear so much about him in Chaitanya Charitamrita because he was just a little boy during Lord Chaitanya's time. But he carried on the tradition of Lord Chaitanya's chanting of the holy name and writing about the chanting of the holy name. That's what he's known for, Gopal Guru. Anything in the room? Okay.
Maharaj, are all the characters in the Bhagavatam in some way or form devotees of Krishna in their previous life?
They're not necessarily eternal associates of Krishna. Here's one example described in the Gopi Gita section of the Bhagavatam, or the Rasa dance section of the Bhagavatam. There's a group of gopis called Rishi Chari gopis that were the sages in the Dandak forest when Lord Ramachandra went through the Dandak forest. And some of those sages were super elevated, and when they saw Lord Chaitanya, when they saw Lord Ramachandra, they became very attracted to Lord Chaitanya in a transcendental sense, wishing that to become in wives in that transcendental relationship. So Lord Ramachandra indicated in his next incarnation, or in his future incarnation, as Lord Krishna, they would become situated in that kind of relationship. So Rishi Chari gopis became gopis in Vrindavan. So they weren't devotees of Krishna, but they were devotees, and given the opportunity to be engaged in his association. Behind you?
We understand why Putana went back to Godhead. Went back to Goloka. But I also heard in your earlier classes that Kaliya also went back to Goloka. So can you help me understand what?
There's lots of detail about Putana, not much detail about Kaliya. It's found in several places in Jiva Goswami's writings. But there's no detail. But, Kaliya was sent back to the Ramanaka Lake. And where the Ramanaka Lake is, it's often said it's somewhere in Southeast Asia, somewhere near Fiji, Ramanaka Lake. So that's where he went back to, but he was purified by the touch of Krishna's feet. His envy was completely gone. He had become a pure devotee. So when he died, where did he go? Doesn't say in the Bhagavatam, but Jiva Goswami, there must be some, Shruti Praman or Shastra Praman to be the basis and support for his saying he went, to the spiritual world. But there's no detail. He just says. And he is in the mood of service. Dasya, ras.
He's in his form as a snake.
Doesn't say, just says Kalya. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes that also. He lists the different rasas. When Krishna delivers, he delivers them to the spiritual world. And they're in different rasas and listed in the Dasya Ras. No, excuse me. Yeah, Dasya Ras is Kalya. Doesn't give anything about form and what he does. And maybe it's somewhere. I don't know. I only know what I know from our acharyas.
Thank you. Question from Sanjay Jayaraman. Are we to understand that the deer and calves are spiritual beings that accompanied Krishna's entourage during his pastimes and returned to the spiritual world thereafter, human form not required?
Yes. Yes, we can understand that. Yes. Human form is not required to go back to the spiritual world. These are associates of Krishna. And they're fortunate enough to be in that position of direct contact with Krishna. So they're special. Their forms are spiritual forms. That's said repeatedly. Repeatedly. Their senses are spiritual senses. They're not spiritualized senses. They're spiritual forms with spiritual senses. They're not ordinary. Okay. Krishna Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai.